The clock hadn't yet struck midday on October 20th, 1998, when Linda, also known as Lyn, aged 40, stepped out for a walk with her lurcher dog, Jay, along the quiet lanes of Ruan High Lanes on Cornwall's Roseland Peninsula. What should have been an ordinary afternoon, the kind defined by a familiar rhythm and routine, would end in one of the most perplexing and chilling unsolved murders in British history. By early afternoon, her body was found lying in the gateway to a field near Ruan Methodist Chapel, discovered by a passing visitor. Emergency services were called, but Lyn had already been stabbed multiple times in a prolonged attack. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her beloved dog lay unharmed beside her. There had been no cries for help, no obvious struggle captured by eyewitnesses, just sudden, devastating violence in broad daylight. Investigators combed the scene and questioned witnesses, but the fragments of evidence never coalesced into answers. What should have been a clear trail to justice dissolved into confusion. Over the years, the case gradually cooled, yet it never disappeared from public consciousness. 4 months after the murder, Lyn's tortoiseshell glasses, missing from the original scene, were found lying in the same field, a haunting and unexplained return. Decades later, advances in DNA technology yielded a partial profile believed to belong to her killer. Detectives continue to appeal for information today, clinging to the hope that someone, somewhere, holds the missing piece. The name Lyn Bryant was familiar in the small Cornish village of Ruan High Lanes long before 20 October 1998. To her neighbors, she was not a headline but a presence, warm, dependable, and quietly woven into the fabric of her community. Lyn lived her life anchored in family and familiar routines, a mother, a wife, and a grandmother who lived just a short walk from the winding rural lanes she knew so well. For years, she would take her dog Jay, a brown and cream-colored lurcher, for daily walks along those quiet roads, often greeting passing friends or lingering to watch the fields shift with the seasons. On the morning of the murder, Lyn carried out her usual chores. She cleaned a local house, visited her parents nearby, and chatted with neighbors about everyday matters. Midland lanes and green hedgerows were the backdrop to her life, a setting familiar and comfortable where nothing seemed out of place. Close friends described her as sociable and family-oriented, someone who cherished the laughter of her children and grandchildren, and who planned ahead with hopeful anticipation for future birthdays and gatherings. Around midday, she drove to the local garage to buy petrol and groceries. Several witnesses reported seeing her on familiar roads, her gray Ford Sierra blending into the quiet rural rhythm. At about 2:30 p.m., she set out once more with Jay, following her accustomed circular walk toward Ruan High Lanes Methodist Chapel, a short distance from her home. Those who saw her that afternoon described her movements as typical, a woman at ease with her surroundings, yet unaware of how dramatically this walk would differ from any before. The weather that day was cool, with a slight breeze rustling through the hedgerows, dew still clinging to the grass after an earlier shower. The quiet of the village was punctuated only by the rhythmic padding of Jay's feet on the lane. She wore sensible boots, jeans, a jumper, and her brown waxed jacket, attire she had worn for countless walks in both sunshine and rain. The rhythm of her breath, the soft jangle of Jay's collar, the distant calls of birds all composed a scene that felt ordinary, uneventful, almost serene. But just minutes after she was last seen heading toward the chapel, something went horribly wrong. Around 2:45 p.m. to 2 p.m., a passing motorist saw Lyn speaking briefly with a man at the chapel junction, the last confirmed sighting of her alive. The details of that encounter have never been fully explained, and the man was never identified. Moments later, a field gateway that Lyn had walked past countless times became the scene of a violent and fatal assault. At about 2:30 p.m., her body was found by a holidaymaker driving along the lane. She lay by a gateway near Trevellis Manor, her dog Jay beside her, unharmed. Emergency services were called, but Lyn was pronounced dead at the scene. Evidence later revealed she had been stabbed multiple times in an attack that suggested a struggle, and her clothing had been disturbed in a way that led investigators to classify the killing as sexually motivated. Her life, defined by familiar smiles, cherished routines, and simple joys, was cut short in a place she walked every day. The quiet dissipated that afternoon, replaced by questions that have lingered for decades. The moment Lyn Bryant's body was found that October afternoon, Devon and Cornwall police launched what would become one of the longest, largest, and most painstaking murder investigations in the force's history. Detectives sealed off the rural lane near Ruan High Lanes Methodist Chapel, canvassed nearby farms and homes, and began the first of countless interviews with anyone who might have seen anything that day. What they were confronted with, however, was a case that would confound them at every turn. From the very beginning, officers operated under the name Operation Grenadine, a major crime inquiry with a dedicated team of detectives, forensic specialists, and intelligence officers. In those early days, house-to-house inquiries were launched and the scene painstakingly searched. But unlike many investigations where a single witness or piece of evidence can point the way, this one produced clues that were teased without revealing, hints without certainty. In the days following the murder, several competing theories emerged. Some of the initial conjectures centered on the possibility of a random attack, that a stranger might have passed through the sleepy Roseland lanes and struck without warning. Others speculated the crime bore elements of a sexually motivated attack, largely because Lyn's clothing appeared disturbed when her body was found. Yet there was no evidence of an assault and no clear indication of motive. These uncertainties only deepened the mystery. Earlier that afternoon, several eyewitness reports introduced more threads for detectives to follow. One witness described seeing a white van pull up beside Lyn at a local petrol barrage before she walked Jay. The driver, a heavy-set man with a beard, remained in the vehicle but was never identified. That same van, later eliminated after police traced and checked more than 6,700 similar vehicles, was seen in the area in the days leading up to the murder. Another witness reported seeing Lyn speaking with a man near a junction near the Methodist Chapel just minutes before her death. This man, described as in his 30s and wearing light-colored clothes, has never been traced. Yet another individual was seen walking away from the murder location shortly after the estimated time of the assault. A man of medium build, ordinary clothing, whose identity also remains unknown more than 2 decades later. Forensic experts combed through every physical clue they could find. Among the most baffling was the discovery of blue polyester fibers on Lyn's clothing, fibers that did not match anything she owned. These microscopic fragments offered the hope of a link to clothing or material carried by her attacker, but no definitive match was ever made at the time. Perhaps the most haunting element of the case was a single small item, Lyn's tortoiseshell glasses. These were missing when her body was discovered, only to reappear 4 months later in the very gateway where she had been killed, perched atop the mud as though placed there deliberately. Police admitted that such an item would almost certainly have been noticed during the original search, raising unsettling questions. Had the glasses been dropped later? Did the killer return? Or did someone else encounter them and make the choice to put them back? None of these questions has ever been definitively answered. As the weeks turned into months and months into years, the investigation evolved but never stagnated. Officers revisited evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and pursued any lead that might shed light on the crime. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the case was repeatedly reviewed and re-examined as advances in DNA techniques improved. In 2016, a significant development occurred when advances in DNA techniques allowed scientists to extract a partial DNA profile believed to be that of the killer from preserved evidence. This breakthrough offered something detectives had long sought, a genetic trace that might, if matched, identify the person responsible. But with no match on the national database, the search instead turned to retaking samples from thousands of individuals who had previously been questioned or were in the area at the time of the crime. Over time, anniversary appeals, public campaigns, and forensic reviews have generated new lines of inquiry, including dozens of fresh public calls for information in recent years. Yet still, no arrest has been made. Despite this, police continue to pursue every avenue, convinced that someone, somewhere holds information that could finally connect this partial DNA profile to a name. A search with no satisfied ending. Yet, what should have been the beginning of answers instead became an unraveling of possibilities. With each new technique and each new appeal, investigators have chased fragments of truth, hoping against hope that the next lead will break the decades-old silence. But for Lyn's family and for the community that watched this quiet village change forever, those early weeks of investigation, full of promise, tension, and possibility, remain among the most poignant and painful chapters in a case that still awaits justice. As the calendar pages turned, the urgency that once gripped Ruan High Lanes began to fade. In the weeks immediately following the murder, police had worked around the clock. Detectives interviewed hundreds of people, reviewed every scrap of physical evidence, and issued repeated public appeals. But by the end of that first year, the momentum that had driven the early investigation began to sputter. Leads thinned, potential suspects proved elusive, and the trail that had felt so promising in autumn 1998 gradually grew cold. For Lyn's family, the passage of time brought a unique kind of suffering. In the weeks after her death, they were surrounded by investigators and journalists, their heartbreak visible and visceral. But months later, as newspapers stopped printing updates and television crews moved on to fresher tragedies, Lyn's loved ones were left with silence. Every day without answers carved deeper lines of uncertainty into the lives of those who had hoped for swift justice. Lyn's husband, children, and extended family held vigils, kept her photograph prominently displayed in their homes, and actively participated in every police review that came their way. They endured the agonizing uncertainty of unanswered questions. Who saw something they didn't realize was important? Whose memory might unlock the truth? Yet, as headlines faded and the public's attention shifted elsewhere, the conviction that justice would arrive quickly seemed to slip further into the realm of fantasy. Through it all, one detail refused to vanish from the collective memory of the case: Lyn's tortoiseshell glasses. Missing when her body was first discovered, the glasses shouldn't logically have been found at all. But 4 months after the murder, they turned up at the very gateway where Lyn had been killed. Police were adamant that the glasses would almost certainly have been seen by officers during the initial meticulous search of the area. Why then had they appeared only later? Who placed them there, and why? That question became a touchstone of frustration and fascination, a haunting clue that refused to let the story fade completely. As the years rolled by, time itself became an antagonist. Witnesses aged, recollections blurred, and the physical evidence collected in 1998, fibers, statements, impressions, weakened with age. Police reviews continued, sporadic appeals resurfaced on anniversaries, and advances in forensic science offered glimmers of hope. Yet each new technique seemed to reveal another layer of ambiguity rather than clarity. And so, long after the last media camera left Ruan High Lanes, one question remained as potent as ever: who killed Lyn Bryant? Through the years, that unanswered question stood as a testament not only to the baffling nature of the crime, but to the enduring mystery that has refused to be solved. Even after decades of investigation, the murder of Lyn Bryant did not settle into quiet resignation. It remained a puzzle without a solution, a question with no answer, and a community haunted by what if. The case never truly faded, and with each fresh police appeal and forensic review, new theories rose, only to confront contradictions and uncertainty that refused to be resolved. Among the earliest and most persistent ideas was the belief that the killer must have been someone who knew the area well. Ruan High Lanes is remote, part of Cornwall's Roseland Peninsula, a quiet landscape of hedges and open fields seldom visited by strangers. Detectives themselves expressed the likelihood that the murderer was local, citing the isolated terrain where the killing occurred. This wasn't a place a passing traveler would wander. It felt familiar, known, and difficult to access unless you belonged there. Yet others argued the attack could have been random, an act by a stranger passing through, unseen and unconnected to the community. There have always been voices who point to the lack of any confirmed personal link between Lyn and her killer. Despite extensive inquiries, nothing in her background suggested someone close. No argument, no recent conflict, no troubled relationship that pointed toward a domestic motive. That ambiguity fueled speculation that the assailant might have been an opportunistic stranger. One of the most enduring physical clues from the case came in the form of blue polyester cotton fibers found on Lyn's clothing. Forensic analysis indicated they did not belong to Lyn or her household, suggesting they came from another garment, possibly worn by the killer. Some theorists have suggested that these fibers might point toward a specific type of casual or work clothing, and in turn to an occupation or hobby that might have placed someone in the area that afternoon. But without any direct match to a garment or suspect, this line of inquiry remained speculative rather than conclusive. Then there's the mystery of Lyn's tortoiseshell glasses. They were missing when her body was first found and should have been noticed during the original meticulous search of the scene. Yet 4 months later, they turned up lying on the muddy ground near where she was killed. Police publicly acknowledged that it was extremely unlikely they had been overlooked in the initial search. Two possible explanations have been weighed. Either the killer returned to the scene and placed them there intentionally, or some other person, perhaps an unknown witness, found them later and chose to leave them where they would be seen. Both theories raise further questions. Why return them if you are the killer, and if someone else found them, why not report them immediately? Some investigators have questioned whether the man seen speaking with Lyn near the chapel shortly before her death might have been the same individual driving the white van spotted earlier that day, a vehicle seen in the area on multiple occasions but never traced to its owner. Witness descriptions varied, and while the van was a strong early lead, despite tracing thousands of similar vehicles, it was never identified. This raised the possibility that the witness sightings involved more than one person, perhaps unrelated to the crime, muddying an already confusing trail. Other theories have looked beyond single suspects to broader connections. Early in the investigation, police noted the potential similarity to other unsolved murders of lone women walking dogs in the West Country, though they never formally linked these cases. Some retired investigators have speculated over possible connections to other killings, arguing that similarities in modus operandi, victims alone, remote settings, stabbing attacks, might point to a traveling offender or pattern. Yet official inquiries have treated each case independently, and no definitive link has been established. Finally, the development of a partial DNA profile in 2016 breathed new life into these theories, offering a way to eliminate suspects and refocus speculation. Police appeal annually for people to come forward with names from their memories of the time, hoping someone will identify an individual who fits the genetic trace now preserved in databases. But even this modern breakthrough has yet to yield a match. These theories float side by side, each offering a thread of possibility, yet none providing the clarity needed to solve the case. Conflicting eyewitness accounts, unexplained items, and gaps in evidence leave investigators and armchair theorists alike with variations on a single question: who killed Lyn Bryant? With each unanswered theory, the mystery deepens rather than resolves, reminding us that some crimes leave behind more questions than answers. In the years since Lyn Bryant was murdered on 20 October 1998, the burden of unanswered questions has become its own form of grief for her family. From the first devastating moments of loss to the present day, the absence of closure has shaped their lives in quiet and profound ways. The case remains open, but the truth they seek, the name of the person responsible, has never come. Each anniversary of Lyn's death brings renewed public appeals and forensic reviews, but also a stark reminder that no resolution has yet been reached. For Lyn's husband, children, and wider family, living without answers isn't simply disappointing, it's a daily weight. There's no finality, no point at which emotional wounds can say they have healed. Every day, they carry the memory of what Lyn meant to them and the nagging possibility that the person who took her life could still be out there. In repeated appeals, senior investigators have acknowledged that time has not diminished the family's pain and that they remain convinced someone knows what happened that day. The family's resilience has been remarkable. They have participated in police appeals, shared their memories of Lyn with the public, and welcomed advances in forensic science that promise fresh hope. But each new appeal, including a prominent one on the 25th anniversary of her murder, underscored the same stark reality. Without crucial information from someone with knowledge of the crime, the investigation can only go so far. A reward of up to £20,000 has been offered for information leading to a conviction, yet still, the key piece of the puzzle remains out of reach. Living with this uncertainty is not a temporary condition for Lyn's loved ones, it has become a lifelong sentence. They ask the same questions over and over. Did the killer live nearby? Did they move on with their life while Lyn's family continued to suffer? Has someone always held information that might unlock the mystery but never spoken up? In public statements, police have echoed their belief that someone in the community may hold the missing piece. Yet more than 25 years later, that break has not come. For the family, every day without answers is a reminder that justice and comfort still eludes them. The absence of answers became a life sentence, not for one person, but for everyone left behind. On October 20, 1998, Lyn Bryant stepped out with her dog Jay along the familiar lanes of Ruan High Lanes, Cornwall, never to return. What began as a routine walk ended in a violent attack that stunned a quiet community. Nearly 3 decades later, investigations, forensic reviews, and public appeals have continued, yet the identity of her killer remains unknown. The unanswered nature of this crime reminds us that even in an age of advanced science, some mysteries resist closure. What happened on that tranquil autumn afternoon? Did someone see something they didn't realize was important? Was the person who spoke to Lyn minutes before her death merely passing by, or were they a vital piece of the puzzle? The blue fibers found on her clothing, the delayed discovery of her tortoiseshell glasses, and the partial DNA profile developed years later, each element raises questions that still echo through time. This case stands not just as a single unresolved crime, but as a testament to the countless stories that fade from headlines yet remain deeply felt by those left behind. What do you think was missed? Could someone reading this recall a detail that matters? Could this case still be solved with one more piece of information? The search for justice is never truly over. Who killed Lyn Bryant? And more urgently, who knows something that could finally answer that question? If you have any information or thoughts on the case, share them in the comments below. And for more true crime stories, subscribe to stay updated as we continue to uncover the mysteries that remain unsolved.